Welcome back to Tech Take. I'm Adam Housley in Los Angeles. And if you watch us each week, you know news and technology collides, and a lot of times that means you're talking about defense specialties. A lot of the things we find in our military, a lot of the technology our military uses ends up in our hands at some point. And this week, once again, we have Allison Berry on, who comes on almost every single week to talk about everything defense technology. She's our defense specialist and war games columnist for FoxNews.com. And we always joke about all the different topics you've had. Some of them are incredible, some of them are fun, and this one is actually pretty interesting, the Terminator 2 robots. Tell us about what Terminator 2 robots are, Allison.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of incredible, like wow, out of the box, quite relevant, and also fun. These are called M-Blocks, Adam, and it's a huge breakthrough. I don't know if you're familiar. Do you remember with that Terminator 2 film where there's a female Terminator and she was sort of made out of what looked like a liquid steel, and if she lost an arm, it could come back to her and kind of recoalesce and reform into an arm again.
Don't be surprised, son, I wasn't put here to stay at night. The evil army of Shaitan on play, so the family sits together.
So we're going to have a Terminator 2 army?
Well, you know, it's been the goal of DoD to have a robot army for quite some time. That's kind of...
Well, we'd all like to have a robot army. I'm sure my bosses would like to have a robot army full of robot anchors. But, I mean, what's the reality on this?
Yep, let's drill down to brass tacks. So it is actually possible, and there's been a lot of naysayers, as you'd imagine, saying there's no way this is ever actually going to happen. This humble little block that we're looking at right now, that is called an M-Block, and that is genuinely paving the way for ultimately creating those types of Terminators.
Just walk in the streets, death can take you away. It's never guaranteed that you'll see the next day.
They're modular robots as opposed to kind of the big Johnny Fives that people would be familiar with seeing. Yeah, those are still very slow going. The progress in that has been fast yet slow. You know, I think people are frustrated it's not where they would love it to be. The sort of George Jetson kind of made robots and the like. We have the Roombas.
So, you know, I guess it comes back to this. I mean, is this a waste of time? I mean, it's cool technology. It's neat to be able to see these things flash back together, and that's great and fun and dandy, but, you know, we still haven't perfected, for example, the ability, we're getting closer, to landing an unmanned aircraft on an aircraft carrier. I mean, those things you would think would need to come first before you get to, and then you have to build the robots that would even work before you get to a robot that gets reattach an arm to itself.
Right. You know, I love the practical questions of, yeah, I'd love to talk about that a little bit. So, sure, this is very early days. You know, sometimes we talk about things that are right off the assembly line, ready to go and be fielded, and sometimes we talk about really emerging things. And I like to bring those to you too, because I think they're fascinating. It just shows where imagination and hard work can take you sometimes. So, in the case of this, look, you know, there are cute little blocks that are flying around, not really capable of much at this point. But when you look at things like the Philippines disaster, that huge natural disaster, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could send an army of these things in, you know, send in an aircraft carrier with these, and they just sort of take themselves out into the area and help people. They can assemble themselves intelligently into, say, shelters, temporary shelters, provide shelter for people. They can reconfigure themselves into a bridge if a bridge is down to help get that aid over to the other side of a river, for example. So there's really fantastic things they could do on the, not just the war machine side. You know, for example, if you want to look at the war type stuff, we often hear people talking about chemical weapons in relation to Syria, but of course it's a problem, a threat we face in more than Syria, other countries. And wouldn't it be fantastic? You know, you never want to send people into war full stop, but you know, particularly when an awful hazard to send people into that invisible sort of chemical biological warfare hazard. So wouldn't it be great if we could send in robots, like armies of these little cubes that you could send in, and they configure themselves into instruments to investigate the situation, identify exactly what the nature of the threat is. Is it mustard gas? Is it something else? Is it sarin? You know, bring those samples back without having to put humans out there. You know, and while they're out there, what if they come across people who need help? They can reconfigure themselves into, say, you know, a UGV that was able to take someone out to safety, out of the hot zone, and get them the treatment that they need. So, of course, this is very early days technology, but I still think it's terribly important to see people committed to making those solutions happen and finding a way to do it.
Absolutely, and I always say that rather than calling them transformers, they're almost something along. Sorry, rather than calling them Terminators, they're almost like transformers. I mean, in the sense that, as you mentioned, they could transform themselves into a bridge or into a shelter, depending on the necessity. And of course, humanitarian response is a huge deal for our military.
Just walking the streets, death could take you away. It's never guaranteed that you'll see the next day. At night, the evil armies of Shaitan don't play. So defend the family, that's the code to obey. But if I fall asleep and death takes me away, don't be surprised, son, I wasn't put here to stay at night. The evil army of Shaitan don't play. So the family sits together.
So here, I have a flower in my hand. It's pretty, but it doesn't really exist. What you see is a 3D object that we're merging into a video in real time. By using standard personal computer, we can mix real and virtual together with a new level of interactivity, a new level of fluidity. And look how the flower is perfectly following the movement of my hand. So, what is a demonstration today? We have on this table 2 video cameras, providing video stream to both computers. We have on this table some real elements representing the real world. And we have on the screen the information after the images after the information has been processed using our technology. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how we can add and move around any object in this real world with a big simplicity. So what is augmented reality for? Our software is already used by our clients in aeronautic and automotive markets, such as Airbus, Nissan, BMW. We provide to this company a very powerful new product with multiple applications, from design simulation to maintenance. Using augmented reality, software engineers and designers can visualize new prototypes by changing shapes, colors, testing new ergonomic, cutting design time and cost dramatically, saving over 10 million euros on each project. So as we blend the real and the virtual together, the car that I have in my hand right now. Valentin, can I have something a little nicer, please? Thank you, Van. So, as I put the hammer on this table, oh, you missed it. Let's try again, Valentin. As I put the hammer on this table, we are going to start a race by producing a 3D element that will take into account the actual relief of these real models using real terrain feedback. So it's important to note that what we'll hear on stage, using only a table and few models to represent the real world, our clients are already merging 3D into video with exactly the same simplicity. So let me show you now how, using augmented reality, city planners and architects can test new models for their project. letting people visualize how these projects will change their surroundings. And once again, you can see here how this 3D building is perfectly merged to these rooms. So Valentin, as we have this building, can we have an heliport? Thank you, Val. And as we have an heliport, can you fly an helicopter? Thanks. So these changes are also a great value to the entertainment industry, letting them storyboard new elements instantly and keep overall costs down. But look who is inside the helicopter. I think you know her. Oh, Chris. I didn't know you learned to pilot an helicopter. That's great news. Well, on top of that, we can even do lighting and environment mapping to get this 3D object as real as possible. So on location, on battlefield, in the research lab, on a road, or even in a small space, you can add any number of 3D objects, providing any information such as point-to-point distances. And once again, the ability of our software to mask the 3D element by these real models with such accuracy is unique. Let me give you another example of how using augmented reality we can even look inside this building to see how it is laid out. That's totally new. And right now, for those who still have some doubts about our technology, watch this and watch your heads, everybody. Valentin is going to fly the helicopter inside the audience. Be careful, Valentin. So, it's possible, even here in the hotel dorm room in Arizona, Scottsdale, to prove to you the flexibility our software provides to you and to many of your clients. I would like to thank Chris for her invitation. I would like to thank you for your attention. I would like to thank also the Demo organization. And I hope I get the opportunity to meet many of you on our booth 15. And let me break everything before.
In an article entitled Fees on the Battlefield and Other U.S. Military Experiments, published by the British news agency The Guardian on June 18, 2007, it discusses strange government projects, and I quote, "Then there's the prophet hologram, the projection of the image of an ancient god over an enemy capital, whose public communications have been seized and used against it in a massive psychological operation." Let's take a look at the Army Research Lab, Adelphi, Maryland's progress report from November 96 through August 97. The session number ADA 3338490. The topic, a 3D holographic display using strontium barium niobate. Its abstract states, an innovative technique for generating a three-dimensional holographic display using strontium barium niobate is discussed. The resultant image is a hologram that can be viewed in real time over a wide perspective or field of view. The holographic image is free from system-induced aberrations and has a uniform high quality over the entire field of view.
Takes me away, don't be surprised, son. I wasn't put here to stay at night. The evil army of Shaitan on play, so the family sits together. Just walking the streets, death could take you away. It's never guaranteed that you'll see the next day. At night, the evil armies of Shaitan don't play. So defend the family, that's the code to obey.
But if I fall asleep and death takes me away, don't be surprised, son, I wasn't put here to stay at night. The evil army of Shaitan don't play, so the family sits together.
We've seen the chemtrails, and there's a lot of speculation about what they're being used for. Weather control and mind control are at the top of the list. But as you'll see in a second, chemtrails have been directly linked to barium, which is one of the main components of the Army's 3D holography display.
Could a strange substance found by a southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention. Well, tonight, KSLA News 12 investigation reporter Jeff Farrell shows us the results of testing we had done about what's in our skies.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
You know, because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
According to Section 5.6 of a military research paper entitled An Operational Analysis for Air Force 2025, an application of value-focused thinking to future air and space capabilities, military brainstorming as of May 1996 was researching, constructing, yet again, another holographic projection system. This time they were looking to implement an airborne holographic projector that would display a 3-dimensional visual image in a desired location removed from the display generator. The projector can be used for psychological operations and strategic perception management. It is also useful for optical deception. The picture you see here speaks for itself. This isn't depicted as a ground-based weapon, but rather one that would project a deceptive image hologram in the air. Could the chemtrails play a role in this? I'm no scientist, so I can't tell you absolutely yes or even maybe. But the chemical connection, barium, along with the military's own documents, lead me to think in that direction. But if they've got some kind of crazy projection system, that in and of itself isn't going to convince anyone of anything. Unless, of course, God is a mute and he's going to come in complete silence. Let's face it, even the most action-packed movies are boring without some kind of a stunning soundtrack. Well, just in time for it to be exploited in the very same way, the technology now exists to beam sound right into your head. Strategy.com reports in an article entitled Death Ray Replaced by the Voice of God that the U.S. Navy is using non-lethal systems called LRAD, or Long Range Acoustic Device. This is being used right now in the Persian Gulf. Many small fishing and cargo boats ply these waters, and it's often hard to get the attention of the crews. With LRAD, you just aim it at a member of the crew and have an interpreter speak to the sailor. It was noted that the guy on the receiving end was sometimes terrified, even as he realized it was a large American destroyer that was talking to him. This apparently gave the Army guys some ideas, for there are now rumors in Iraq of a devilish American weapon that makes people believe they are hearing voices in their heads. And then there's the A&E television series called Paranormal State, which used a clever combination of a large billboard and cutting-edge technology to beam frightening ads directly into people who were walking near the show's billboard in the heart of New York City. The advertising website MediaBuyerPlanner.com writes in an article entitled "Billboard Whispers into Pedestrians' Ears for A&E's Paranormal State" that an ad for A&E's ghost-themed series Paranormal State uses technology to transmit an audio spotlight from the rooftop speakers in New York's Soho directly into the ears of passers-by. Here's a sample showcasing how this concentrated sonic beam works. There are literally dozens of patents dealing with ways of beaming sonic transmissions directly into people's minds. This was once called telepathy. Today it's just modern-day technology and advertising. Yes, I understand this sounds absolutely bizarre. Where's the proof? Where is it? We've recently seen Al Gore and Prince Charles appear in holographic form. But do we actually know of any such encounter we can attribute holographic technology as to having been used as part of a supernatural psyop? I believe we do.
The Voice of God weapon returns. The Voice of God weapon, a device that projects voices into your head to make you think God is speaking to you, is the military's equipment of an urban myth, meaning it's mentioned periodically at defense workshops. Ironically, I first heard about it at the same defense conference where I met Noah. And typically someone whispers about it actually being used. Now, Stephen Cormack, writing at the ComOps Journal, described his own encounter with this urban myth. At a government workshop some time ago, I heard someone describe a new tool that was described as the voice of Allah. This was said to be a device that would operate at a distance and would deliver a message that only a single person could hear. The story was that it was tested in a conflict situation in Iraq and pointed at one insurgent in a group who whipped around looking in all directions and began a heated conversation with his compatriots who did not hear the message. At the time, I greeted the story with some skepticism. There's also a story where it was used in the first Iraqi war to make the Iraqi troops lay down their weapons. Is there any basis to this technology? Well, Holosonic Research Lab and American Technology Corporation both have versions of directed sound, which can allow a single person to hear a message that others around don't hear. DARPA appears to be working on its own sonic projector. Intriguingly, Strategy Page reports that troops are using the long-range acoustic device as a modified voice of God weapon. It appears that some of the troops in Iraq are using spoken as opposed to screeching, LRAD, to mess with enemy fighters. Islamic terrorists tend to be superstitious and of course very religious. LRAD can put the words of God into their head. If God, in the form of a voice that only you can hear, tells you to surrender or run away, what are you going to do? And as Corman also notes, CNET recently wrote about an advertisement in New York for A&E's TV show Paranormal State, which uses some of this technology. Beyond direct sound, it's long been known that microwaves at certain frequencies can produce an auditory effect that sounds like it's coming from within someone's head. And there's the nagging question of classified microwave work at Brooks Air Force Base that the Air Force stubbornly refuses to talk about. That brings us back to the voice of God Allah weapon. Is it real or bogus? In one version related to me by another defense reporter, it's not just Allah's voice, but an entire holographic image projected above. Who decides what Allah looks like? Does it exist? I'm not sure. But it's funny that when you hear it brought up at defense conferences, no one ever asks the obvious question. Does anyone think this thing will actually convince people God is speaking to them? I'm thinking not.
Just walking the streets, death could take you away. It's never guaranteed that you see the next day. At night, the evil armies of Satan don't play. So defend the family, that's the code to obey.
But if I fall asleep and death takes me away,